على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ما اتخذ الله من ولد وما كان معه من إله إذا لذهب كل إله بما خلق ولعلى بعضهم على بعض سبحان الله عما يصفون عالم الغيب والشهادة فتعالى عما يشركون قل رب إما تريني ما يوعدون رب فلا تجعلني في القوم الظالمين وإنا على أن نريك ما نعدهم لقادرون ادفع بالتي هي أحسن السيئة نحن أعلم بما يصفون وقل رب أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك رب أن يحضرون صدق الله العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Last night we had read that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has answered the questions that are raised by the pagans of Makkah in terms of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and last night we had alluded to the meaning of this ayah as well, which addresses the disbelief and the hollow nature of the disbelief of the Christians and the Jewish people, and in fact some of the pagans as well. They associated partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of a very specific kind, where they said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a son or a daughter. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, مَتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ مِن وَلَدٍ وَمَا كَانَ مَعَهُ مِنْ إِلَٰهٍ إِذًا لَذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَٰهٍ بِمَا خَلَقَ وَلَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. If it were that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have created a son or any other ilah. So the meaning of the ayah is مَتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ مِن وَلَدٍ. The fact is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not taken a son to himself. وَمَا كَانَ مَعَهُ مِنْ إِلَٰهٍ, and neither is any God created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِذَا لَذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَٰهٍ بِمَا خَلَقَ وَلَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. If had there been so, then every God would have taken away what he created, and each of them would have been aggressive against each other. That we talked about last night, that Godship is such a thing that has to belong to only one. If there was multiple gods, then there will definitely be fights and friction and aggression towards each other, and they would have a constant fight, and the system of the earth and the universe would not be working so smoothly. Subhanallahi amma yasifun. The truth is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very high, very pure from what they describe and associate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is their petty minds that they think of these things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is much pure, much above. عالم الغيب والشهادة فتعالى عما يشركون. Allah is the knower of the hidden and the manifest, that which is apparent and that which is hidden, ghaib and shahada. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of all of it. فتعالى عما يشركون. So he is far higher than their ascribing of partners to him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is writing and recording this shirk that they are doing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pure and above, higher than the partners that they are ascribing, or that this act of ascribing partners to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qul, this is addressed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that say, Rabbi, my Lord, imma turiyanni ma yu'adun. If you are to show me in my life that punishment which the infidels are threatened with, that punishment that has been promised to the kuffar. One is the hereafter, but also the Prophet ﷺ even himself was not told the exact time that will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punish these people in the world or not, and if it were to happen, when will it happen. The promises of the hereafter, that in the hereafter there is no share for these people and there is only hellfire for them, but even the Prophet ﷺ did not know, and this has been kept vague. So the Prophet ﷺ is being told to ask that, say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if in my lifetime a punishment comes, and although it is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the people of the Prophet ﷺ would not be wiped away from the face of this earth, such a over-encompassing, over-covering punishment that was given to other nations such as Aad and Samud and others, this will not come to that ummah, especially when the Prophet ﷺ is within them. But partial punishments, for example, killing of their leaders at the hands of Muslims, or famine that we talked about. These kind of punishments were given in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ to the kuffar. The Prophet ﷺ is being asked that you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that when a punishment comes to bad people, it also in this world hurts good people as well. So if more people in a town or a community or locality are bad, and because of them the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, then in this world the good people are not saved from that punishment either. But in their favor it's not a punishment, it is an increase in rewards for them. So they, even if they die and even if they come in the line of that punishment, their reward and their level increases in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the punishment in this world, if it comes an overarching punishment, then it does not exclude the righteous people either. The Prophet ﷺ is being asked, is being told to make this dua, that ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, imma turiyanni ma yu'adun, if in my lifetime, if you show me what punishment has been promised to them, Rabbi fala taj'alni fil qawmi adh-dhalimin, Ya Allah, do not make me among these people, do not include me, do not make me among these wrongdoing people. The Prophet ﷺ and all Anbiya, they are ma'soom, they are innocent, there is no chance that they can sin or they can be among the zalimeen. This is a teaching for the followers of the Prophet ﷺ, that if you are living in a group of people where you are trying and still people are not listening to you and not coming to goodness and persisting on their shirk and kufr, then at least ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if a punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, you are not included in those wrongdoers. وَإِنَّا عَلَىٰ أَن نُرِيَكَ مَا نَعِدُهُمْ لَقَادِرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we are fully capable, that we do have the power to show you that with which we have threatened them. So it's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have the authority or the power, it is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He is allowing them time. And until that time comes, idfa' billati hiya ahsanu sayyi'ah. The Prophet ﷺ, the command of the Prophet ﷺ is that idfa' billati hiya ahsanu as-sayyi'ah. That which is evil, repel it with that which is best. So this was the way of the Prophet ﷺ, that people would throw stones at him and he would make dua for them. People would evict him out of his town, he would make dua for them. He would be constantly worried about their betterment, their improvement, how to give them the goodness of the hereafter and this world as well. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ did. نَحْنُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا يَصِفُونَ. We are well aware of what they are describing. So Allah knows what they are doing, and leave their affair to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This ayah, the future implications of this ayah were in part nullified. In part nullified when the Muslims were allowed to attack the kuffar and fight them in this world. The ayat of jihad nullified the part of ayah that is relevant to the kuffar. The part of ayah that applies to the believers, the non-understanding believers that have at least said La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, or the hypocrites who apparently say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, they were saved from the sword of the Muslim. They are saved from the attacks of Muslims. So if a believing Muslim who says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah does not fully act upon Islam, has complete belief but is short in his actions, Muslims will not use sword or force against them to bring them to complete their actions. But the disbelievers who are harming the Muslims, they will be fought with and they will be dealt with force. وَقُلْ رَبِّ أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ هَمَزَاتِ الشَّيَاطِينِ. And because the Prophet ﷺ is also a human being, and this ayah is again a very glaring, very open proof that the Prophet ﷺ was a human being and is a human being, and he had the human things in him. So it's a very human thing, and it's a very ungodly thing that you have emotions, and because of those emotions, when somebody is constantly taunting you and bothering you, it is part of being a human that you have natural anger against them. And the Prophet ﷺ was not free and above that either. So the constant bothering of the kuffar did make the Prophet ﷺ angry, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet ﷺ to make this dua, Rabbi a'udhu bika min hamazati shayateen. If the Prophet ﷺ was not a human being, then he would not have been told to make this dua, that Ya Allah, protect me from the hamazat. Hamazat is a plural of humaz. Humaz is the pushing of shaitan. The Prophet ﷺ has said that shaitan is with every human being, and it comes in all sorts of things that you are doing, good and bad, and it wants to inspire you with evil. So therefore ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection from shaitan. If the Prophet ﷺ was not a human being, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not tell him to seek protection from the hamazat of shayateen. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ رَبِّي أَن يَحْضُرُونَ, and say that my Lord, I seek refuge in you from their even coming near me. So the Prophet ﷺ, he would not do anything against Shariat, but because he's a human being, and because shaitan wants to inspire human beings with evil, excessive anger, the Prophet ﷺ is being asked to make this dua. And more so, it is a lesson for us that if we have that anger that makes us lose control and makes us do things which are against the Shariat of the Prophet ﷺ, then this dua is for us. Rabbi a'udhu bika min hamazati shayateen wa a'udhu bika rabbi an yahdurun. Similarly, Hazrat Khalid radiallahu anh, the Prophet ﷺ advised this dua to him, that he had problems sleeping. So the Prophet ﷺ said that make dua of this, Ya Allah, I seek refuge. The Arabic dua is long, but essentially from protection from the things of anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the things of shaitan. So that's a fact. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن الذين هم أهلك وخاصتك وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.